I got it now. I got it now. Okay, so let us talk about the medical education worldwide. The term MBBS is used to describe undergraduate medical education in many countries, which follows the British system of naming. So while they have in China, they have it as MBBS, which is a 6-year program. In Philippines, they might call it as Doctor of Medicine. In Texila, we call it as Doctor of Medicine program. In many places, they have different names, and the duration varies from country to country. Let's take a look at the medical schools worldwide. It's said that 1/3 of all medical schools are located in 4 countries, and I think probably you guessed it right. India, China, Brazil, and the United States host the highest number of medical schools worldwide. And I think they say that nearly half of the medical schools in the world are located in 10 countries, and 24 countries do not have any medical school, and 50 countries have just one medical school among 207 independent countries across the world. If you look into statistics, like maybe we can say that Caribbean has got one medical school for every 500,000 people. The Americas and Oceania has got one medical school for 1 million people. Europe has 1.8. Asia has got 3.5, and Africa on the lower has got one school per 5 million population. Let's look into studying medicine in the United States. Okay, so they say that for you to study medicine in the United States, you need to definitely have 4 years of bachelor's education before you can enter medical school. And medical education is 4 years, so it takes you 8 years to become a doctor. And then you have conditions like the medical college aptitude test, which is very much mandatory for you to take. For you to enter any medical school, and sometimes it's said that it takes 2 to 3 years to prepare and pass it. And you may take the exam up to 3 times in a single testing year and 4 times in 2 years period. And of course, the medical education, as I said earlier, is 4 years and is divided into preclinical and clinical. The preclinical has got basic sciences like your anatomy, physiology, etc., and the clinical will have your rotations in hospitals. The Liaison Committee on Medical Education, that's LCME, is the accrediting body for medical schools in the US, and only LCME accredited schools grant Doctor of Medicine degree in the United States. If you let's talk about the cost. A prospective candidate must prove that he's got at least a minimum of $25,000 per year, and the tuition fees ranges from between $35,000 to $50,000 a year. The cost of living and food is $15,000 to $20,000 per year. And to get into medical education, you would have good academic record in bachelor's degree, good MCAT scores. You would have fantastic recommendation letters from your professors all over the, who've been teaching you. And then you would have to go through an interview, which is a very difficult process for you to enter medical program. Okay, let's talk about the medical residency in the US. After you finish your medical program, you need to be a resident. You need to get into residency program that's called the postgraduate medical training to be eligible to practice medicine in the US. And the program usually ranges from 3 years to 5 years, depending on the area of specialization. And it's a highly competitive environment where you need to take your USMLE 1, USMLE 2, and then the residency, and USMLE 3 to enter the residency program. Just to give you a brief of what is the pass rates for USMLE exams. Step 1 is the part 1 of the USMLE exam, the United States Medical Licensing Exam, and it said that 94% for US medical graduates and 89% for the osteopathic graduates, and it's only 73% for international medical graduates. For step 2, I think it's 97 for the US graduates, and step 3 is like 97 for US graduates, and only 78% of international medical graduates from international medical schools clear the step 3. Looking into the average physician salary, I think the orthopedicians, the plastic surgeons get the highest. It's close to $500,000 to enter. That's the salary for an orthopedician, and the family medicine being the lowest, that's close to $200,000 US. That's probably a couple of millions in India or in Nigeria or from some other countries where most of our students are from. Okay, let's have a quick look at studying medicine in the US. I'm sorry, in the UK. Okay, so they say that it may take up to 16 years to train before you qualify for medical education, before you qualify as a full-fledged doctor in the US. On the average, the undergraduate course lasts between 4 to 6 years, and then you need to go to post-graduation, which is 2 years of foundation, and then 3 to 8 years in specialist training. And if you look into the application statistics, 22,000 people apply to study at UK medical schools, and only 8,000 are accepted. That includes the UK nationals. Many medical schools requires applicants to sit the UK college admission test or other exams, and the fees is around 12,000 to 43,000 US dollars, depending on which school you get and which program you get into. And I think there are other costs that you associated with living, food, visa, etc. for UK. And to get into an UK medical school, international students should have an IELTS score of not less than 6.5%, and they should have a AAA grades with the chemistry or biology. And then you need to apply to the UCAS website. And it's a very difficult process because students from all over the world compete for the handful of medical seats that are available for international students in the UK. Coming to the salaries, you get somewhere between 28 to 35,000 pounds to 40,000 pounds when you're specialist training, and then once you become a specialist, you could earn between 40 to 70,000 pounds. And consultants who earn between 75,000 to 100,000 pounds. Of course, it's not as big as the United States, but it's very much reasonable compared to most of the countries in the world. Just to get an overview of studying medicine in Canada, I would just like to pause here and try to see if there are any questions which is coming up. Just give me a moment. I will just figure out if there's any questions coming up and then get back to you in a second. Okay, so I think we don't have much questions, but in case you have any questions, this is on a Facebook Live. So please do not hesitate to put your questions on the Facebook Live. And also in the webinar, those who are not using Facebook Live, those who are using the Zoom webinar tool, please do put your questions there and we will definitely have a look at it and try to answer you on those lines. Okay, studying medicine in Canada, let's explore what we have there. Okay, so again, Canada also has a similar system like the US, where you need to have, you must complete 3 to 4 years of undergraduate education before you apply to a 4-year medical program. And on completing the medical program, you need to go into 3 to 7 years of residency, depending on the specialty you might want to choose in. You definitely need to take the medical college admission test. And medical education costs between $18,000 to $70,000 in the US. In Canada. The living cost is between $800 to $1,000 US dollars a month. That's the lowest you can get. It can go up to $2,000 a month on an average. It includes your food, living, transportation, your basic stuff, all those put together. And again, these are some of the details which we would be sharing with you on slides. If you want to get these slides, just put in the comments below and we will get these slides for you. Just to get you details, this is how you can get into an MCAT admission test. Okay, so let's look into some of the tuition fees. As we said, it ranges between 18,000 to 70,000 US dollars. And these are some of the fees, like Memorial University charges between $30,000 per year for foreign students. Dalhousie charges 18,000. There are other universities. I think there's a university which is University of Toronto, which charges close to 66,000 US dollars for international students. Okay, let's go to the next one. Yes, and again, to be practicing residency in Canada, you need to be a citizen or have a landed immigration status. and then you need to have also a license by the College of Physicians and Surgeons of the province where you intend to practice, right? So average payments, like in Alberta, you get up to 350,000 US dollars. That's close to $500,000. And I think the lowest is probably in Nova Scotia, which is like 250,000 plus US dollars per year as a physician. Studying medicine in Australia, let's look at medicine in Australia. I think the usual duration is between 4 to 6 years, depending on your level of entry. And the batch, it's very difficult to get into thing because of the limited seats available. It's a handful of medical schools, and the preference is always given to local students. The international students are welcome to apply, provided they have top grades and they clear the UMAT or ISAT or one of the exams that they have for medical entry. And then the degrees cost between 11 to 25,000 US dollars. That's a minimum cost that you can see for students. And just to get you an idea on the basic salary, residents make somewhere up to 70 to 90,000 US dollars, and a consultant makes up to $500,000. Maximum they make up to $500,000 Australian dollars. That's very high compared to all these countries where we are from. And in Asia, I mean, we're talking about all the developed countries. Let's look into the Asian tiger, Singapore. Again, it takes 5 to 6 years to complete a medical program. If you're not from an English-speaking nation, then you need to take IELTS, and the current fees ranges between 25,000 to 40,000 US dollars. And then, if you're a foreign student, you need to have a service bond with the Ministry of Health that you will have to have a minimum commitment to work in Singapore if you are allowed to study medicine in Singapore. Medical residency, again. Your graduates of Singapore medical schools or primary medical qualification holders are eligible to apply. There are different kinds of postgraduate medical residency entries in Singapore, which is shared in this slide. The average salaries are between, I think, they talk about 30 to 50,000 Singapore dollars a month. So probably it's a top job, you get $500,000 US dollars, as I say, if you're a consultant. Okay, now let's talk about the objective of you here. I think most of you are here today because you want to study medicine and you want to enter medical education. Before I go into cost-effective and easy entry, I would like to know if there's any questions which I should be looking at. I'm looking forward to my team to push me those questions, and just give me a second to look at them. Okay, so let's go off about thinking of cost-effective and easy entry. I think alternate countries to study. Okay, let's say that it's very difficult to study medicine in these developed countries and very extreme entry requirements. It takes a lot of time for you to enter a medical school in these countries because I think the preference is for local students always, and international students find it difficult to navigate through the challenges of medical education in these countries. And among popular study abroad destinations, I think countries in Eastern Europe like Ukraine, Russia, China, Philippines, and now I think Caribbean. These are the popular destinations for students particularly from South Asia, from Middle East, from Africa. Let's look into some of the countries where a lot of students from India and from Africa travel to, so that we get a fair idea on what we are. What is in store for us. Okay, so why a lot of students go into these countries is obvious reason is medical education is very cheap in these countries. You don't need to have bachelor's degree, you don't have entrance exams, etc. Programs are also not offered in native language. I mean, programs are not offered in English. Mostly it's in native language. Pre-medical education and MCAT, I think, as I said, is not necessary, and I think it's easy entry. That's all it is. It's easy entry, cheap education, low cost education, so affordable for most of them. So you go into those schools for those reasons. Now let's analyze the reality of the medical education in these destinations and what's happened to the thousands of students who have studied from here, and where do they stand and how are they doing. Let's look at China as one of the destinations. As you know, China is very popular for its low-cost products. In similar way, it is very popular for its low-cost medical education too. The advantages are there's no donation. The universities are capped between $4,000 to $7,500 a year. Claiming of living cost is to be around $300 a month, supposedly be cheaper. No entrance tests, and it's approved by World Health Organization and certain countries. So some of the disadvantages are they need to learn Chinese language. You need to have an HSK level 4, which is terribly difficult to be eligible to get the diploma, and you need Chinese language training to be interacting with patients. China has more than 35% of the universities in, for example, with the Medical Council of India approved list, which is C grade and very low quality education experience. English speaking capacity is worse. I think the faculties are paid extra to teach in English, but their accents are horrible most of the time, if not very poor. International students are not allowed to touch patients, and it's very difficult to communicate with patients. And many students who have claimed that they have been trained on dummies, and like they don't have real cadavers for training in anatomy and other things. Sometimes to talk to patients, translators are used, and you don't have the real touch with the patients because you don't speak the language well. We have taken an analysis of the Indian students who have appeared for the Foreign Medical Graduate Examination, which is called the Medical Council of India Screening Test. And this examination is required for you to be eligible to practice in India. So why we have taken India as a specific case is because there are a lot of students who go from India to study in these countries, and there's the right kind of data which is available. So 11,800 students went to China, 5,900 went to Russia, 3,000 went to Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. And then we have students in Nepal, Kazakhstan, etc. And if you look into how many of them passed the screening test, it is only a paltry sum of 19% who appeared and passed the screening test data from 2012 to 2016. That means thousands of students, among thousands of students, have taken the exam and have not passed the exam for so many years now. Look into the students who have taken the exams and pass rates. And this data is available with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare of the Government of India. The pass percentage has come down. I mean, it was 28% there, and in 2016, it was just 10.4%. That's very low. Imagine you spent all those years of your life studying for medical education, and you come here and you're not able to pass the exam, and you are just stuck in life. What will you do? You will work as an illegal doctor, or you will keep writing the exam again and again. You get demoralized. You get you don't feel that like this is something you don't feel that you deserve that. So that is the problem when students start looking for cheap education. Failure is a guarantee when the education is provided cheap. I'm not saying it's China medical education is bad. It's fantastic for local students because you have certain local conditions. The top cream of the cream students enter the medical school. The medical schools are designed and designated for the local students. They teach in their language. They understand the language. They communicate in their language. They're doing well. But for foreign students, it is not the case. Foreign students are just going there as second-class citizens. They're taught in a separate English language, separate batch. Nobody cares about them. Teachers don't understand what the students write because they don't understand English most of the time. That's a situation that's predominantly in China. Let's look at Russia. I think a lot of advantages are there. Again, it's the same as no donation. The fees is very low, no entrance exams, approved degrees, subsidized by Ministry of Education, so it's cheap to study. Living costs vary. From Moscow, it is higher. Lower cities, other cities, it might be lower. Again, we have the same problems that we have in China, which we have the language problem, and then the tier 2 and tier 3 universities, which are cheap, are like small universities, low patient base and poor healthcare setups because of the financial situation and economic situations of Russian cities. Weather, I think it's terribly cold. Some places are -20, -30. The disease patterns are entirely different in hospitals. There are racism. I think Russia is very prone to racism, where a lot of foreign students have been hit, and some of them have been killed on the road by racists. Poor exposure, poor conditions, and this is all not data which we've taken. All these data are available in the public domain in the internet. Okay, so these are some of the articles where we clipped for you, which we say that during Hitler's birthday, I think a lot of foreign students get hit, and like there are students who are advised to remain in dormitories during those season, and like they said that I think there were students who were stabbed, and there's a Mauritian student who was killed. There's an African student who got stabbed and killed. These are real news from real news companies, which proves that there's this racism and intolerance in these countries. This is some of the news which we're showing you here. You can always go back and check this later in your free time. This is a news about African students' daily struggle in Ukraine due to being hit by the racists. Again, if you look into the clearance ratios, I think Ukraine is the lowest with 19%, Belarus maybe at 20%, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan is average at 20 to 19.8%. That's the pass rates in these countries. Let's look at Philippines. Philippines is looking at, is coming as a very promising destination for medical education students who want to go to study there. And some of the advantages that we would see in Philippines is, of course, it's low cost of living. They speak English, so you don't have that problem of English-speaking country. And then it is definitely necessary that you need to take the NMAT exams. A lot of agents say that you don't have to take the NMAT exam, but it is true that you need to take NMAT exam. It is very clearly given in the website. A lot of disadvantages because the infrastructure is not great. Some of the universities are good, but some are really very bad. Some of the universities which some of our students have visited just got one lab in the whole medical school. Can you imagine that? Just one lab in the whole medical school. So we have situations like that. International students, NMAT is very, very tough to clear. And then they have quotas. I think there was a regulation that, okay, you can only take X number of international students in certain programs. So you can't take more than X numbers. So students are recruited by agents in big numbers. They go to universities, do the pre-med, which is 1.5 years. You're wasting your time, your energy doing complete pre-medical education, which is of no use to you. And then you enter a medical program, which is not guaranteed. Because you need to first clear the pre-med, which is for 1.5 years. Then you need to take the NMAT exams, and then you need to be eligible to go into the medical school. And there are 17 universities, and of them 14 are in very small rural areas, very bad infrastructure in many cases. There are some fantastic universities in Philippines. There's no question about it. University of Philippines, University of Santa Thomas, St. Luke's University. There are like De La Salle University. There are some fantastic universities in Philippines, but you don't get admission to the fantastic ones. Only the tier 2, tier 3 take the students into the program. And this is something that you should chat and find out from students who are in Philippines about these conditions that is there. And of course, Philippines is also very prone to natural disasters. It's a ring of fire. It is outside the typhoon belt. There are torrential rains and thunderstorms, earthquakes. So I think Philippines gets shut down certain days a year because of all these natural calamities that takes place. Again, if you look into Philippines, they say English-speaking country, NMAT, all those stories, but the numbers speak it all. The truth is revealed by the data. The data with the Ministry of Ministry of Health states that only 24% of the students are clearing the exams after multiple attempts. It's not at one attempt, right? There's at multiple attempts. Some of the, I think this is something which we took from the Department of Foreign Affairs, that is the Embassy of Philippines in India. It's in their website, my friends. Please look at it. They say that it does not accredit education consultants or endorse for visa processing. They say that the quotas, the course quotas are there and limited slots for international students. So you should make sure that you are not going to enter the course. They say that do pre-med course like BS Biology, BS Psychology does not guarantee you slot in medical program, right? all that I told you now few minutes back is exactly validated and made truth by the Embassy of Philippines in India in their official website. You guys need to have a look at that. And this is from the Indian Embassy in Manila. I think, like there are hundreds of students who go to the embassy and complain about the problems that they have. And these are the challenges that's there. You can always read it. I think, they say that, like if a medical school has got, they say that if a medical school has the capacity of 200 seats, they would enroll 800 students into the BS course. And from that, only 1/4 will get into a medical program. For that, you need to clear NMAT, you need to have good scores in pre-med. All these problems are a challenge for you guys. This is in the website of the Indian Embassy in Manila. It's indianembassy.manila.in. Just have a look at it. Okay. I think now we understood, okay, there are top institutions and destinations globally. There are low-cost ones with challenges. Of course, not that 100% have a problem. 80% has a problem, 20% gets through with all these problems anyway. So now let's see that, what if I give you an offer and say that, okay, I will challenge you on the cost issues of UK or USA is mitigated, and the problems that you have in low-cost education destinations like Russia and China are not there. And if you have a solution for both, giving you the best education, which gets you into the United States, to get into a residency program in the United States, because the US faces a doctor shortage of 1 million doctors in the next 10 years down the line. They need 1 million doctors, and you could be one of them, earning that $500,000 package once you get into a residency program in the United States. Let's look into a solution. So the solution here, my friends, I present to you Texila American University, which has got a Doctor of Medicine program, which is a 4.5 years program, or we have different entry levels for students who are at different levels. So mostly the Indian students go into a 4.5 year program. Students who don't have a pre-med goes into a 5.5 years program. And we also have a pharmacy program, which is 5 years and 4 years, depending on your eligibility and criteria where you enter into. We have 2 tracks in our college. One is the Guyana track, where you do the whole program locally, or the one is the American track, where you do 3 years in Guyana and the Caribbean, and you do the last 2 years in the United States in top hospitals in top cities like Chicago, Washington DC, Atlanta, etc. And the great news that I have for all of you here is that we have tied up with Ponce Health Science University from the United States. Ponce Health Science University is one of the top universities in the United States. It's a 40-year-old university. It's been running medicine for the last 40 years, and it's got a 98% pass rate in USMLE2, which is one of the highest in the United States. Our students have matched in residency across the United States, like in all the areas like anesthesia, dermatology, emergency medicine, internal medicine, etc. From 2007 to 2016, we have so many matches in the residency programs. These are some of the matches that we have. And about Ponce Health Science, one of the best universities. It follows an LCME accredited curriculum, and the students will be taught based on flipped classroom model, in which short video lectures are viewed. And in class, you're devoted to exercise projects, discussions that makes the class more engaging and interactive. Okay, so the advantage of this curriculum is students will follow the curriculum which adheres to the US standards, will be taught based on flipped classroom model, while in class time is devoted to exercise projects that makes the class more engaging and interactive, and helps you to get better match in residency, because we follow a world-class curriculum in the which you would be a part of. And some of the advantages of Texila is we are listed in World Health Organization like any university from China, Russia, or other things. And we have local, the language is English. We have a huge campus, a lot of international faculties who are trained in US, UK, India, Philippines, Canada, Japan, etc. teaching with us. We have a 100% pass rate so far with the Medical Council of India, the Medical Council of Nigeria, and other places. Right? We have a 90% pass rate in USMLE Step 1 and 100% pass rate in USMLE Step 2 as of now. So some of the hospitals that we work with in Georgetown, we work with the oldest hospital in the Caribbean, which is the Georgetown Public Hospital, which is a 600-bed teaching hospital. It's a CAMHP approved hospital. And then we work with South African Watersislou University, where students can do 30 weeks of electives in Watersislou. In the US, we work with hospitals like Adventist Hospital, Pickens County Medical Center, Atlanta University, Georgia. So these are the hospitals that we work with through our partners in the United States. And those who choose the US track, we give you complete United States medical licensing examination. We help you with the residency match program to acquire board certification. And once you're selected in a residency, you can earn between $4,000 to $6,000 per month when you're studying. These are some of the pictures of our campus. We have students from 50 different nationalities who are studying with us. And if you want to practice in the Caribbean, you can practice in the Caribbean. We have applied to the CAMHP accreditation. For CAMHP accreditation, we are expecting a site visit anytime soon. Our students are practicing already in different countries in the world. We are the only private medical school to be directly approved by the Medical Council of Guyana in Guyana. We have a 100% pass rate in the Medical Council of India screening test so far. Okay, so I end my presentation here, and I would like to say that, a quote from Robert Frost: "I am not a teacher, but an awakener." I'm not teaching you anything here. I'm not trying to put any, guide you into any thought process. I'm awakening you, and I'm putting you the data, presenting you the data in front of you, which you can anytime go into Google or Facebook and find these details out from people who have experiences, people who are going through this one. And I say that, we say in Texilla, intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education, and that's what we build in Texilla. I would like to thank Global Scholarship Trust for taking this initiative with Texilla American University to bring this fantastic presentation to all of you here.